Hello everybody. Hope everybody's doing well tonight. Thought what I would do is sit down and process a photograph in Lightroom and share it with everybody. I know I've had a couple people asking me some questions, and maybe this will be a opportunity for a few people to be able to perhaps get started with Lightroom, or maybe make a little headway in trying to learn more about how Lightroom works. So anyway, let me get on with it here. Let me go ahead and open Lightroom up for you. Yeah, so we're going to open up Lightroom, and we're going to first thing that we're going to need to do whenever we want to work on any photographs is import them into Lightroom, which sounds like you're actually importing the photograph itself into Lightroom, which you're really not doing. You're when you connect your camera to your computer and you go into Lightroom, Lightroom comes up and shows you your photographs to be downloaded. It actually downloads them onto your computer and then just remembers where they're at. So a lot of people think that you're using, or when you're using Lightroom, you're actually bringing the photograph into Lightroom, and you're not really doing that. To try to just kind of keep it simple, what you're basically doing is you're making a whole bunch of adjustments to your raw file, and Lightroom just makes a list in a file of all your adjustments and just remembers that. So your raw file stays the same, but when you're in Lightroom, it remembers what you did. So when you get done with all of your adjustments in Lightroom, you export it out of Lightroom in the format that you need, like JPEG or a TIFF file, etc. And you export it to the location that you want and the size that you want, all that other stuff. So that's the basic operation of importing and exporting through Lightroom. So let me move on here, and we'll see if I can get this in here. Maybe it'll make more sense as we move along here. So we come into Lightroom. The first thing we want to do is down in the lower left hand corner is import your photo into Lightroom. In this particular case, I'm not importing it from my camera onto my computer. It's already on my computer. So what I'm going to do is import it into Lightroom. So it's essentially the same thing. It's just that it's importing it from my computer instead of my camera. So when we hit import, it brings up this dialog box here. It brings this area up here, and it'll give you a list of your files, or I should say your drives, over here on the left side. So the file that I'm going to play around with is over here on my M drive. So I got this external drive that I have hooked to it. So, and then I just go down to the file location, click on that, and it will show inside of here. For some reason it doesn't. You could have don't import suspected duplicates clicked over here. It may think that that photo is already in there. In this particular case it is. So I'm going to unclick that because it's in a different location, and I'm going to go ahead and import it into Lightroom. So you go down here to lower right hand corner and hit import. Alright, bam. Now there's your file. Okay, so now it's in Lightroom, and you can start working on it. So what you need to do at this point is to come over here to the top, and it gives you some options up here. We're in the library. We're going to get out of library because we're already done. We've found our file, we've imported it in, so now we're going to develop the photograph. So we're going to click on develop, and this gives us all of our toys we can play with, okay? Now, something that's kind of cool that I like to do when I'm processing my photos is I'm already done with this lower panel down here. I don't need it anymore. So there's a little arrow down here. I can click this down. It kind of makes it bigger, and the same with over here. Right now I'm not using the navigator, I'm not using the presets, I'm not using the snapshot feature, the history, collections. See, I'm not using any of this stuff right now, so I'm just going to move it over here to the left too, and as well as the top. I mean, if we're going to move this out, we might as well do the top too, right? So the only one I'm going to leave out is this one right here, but if for some reason I wanted to move it in, I could do that too. So I've had a lot of people in some of my workshops go, oh my God, I don't know where did it go? You know, I can't find it. And so they had accidentally clicked on that little arrow and didn't realize it. So if you hover over the arrow, it pops back up there again. So, okay. Anyway. All right. I just grabbed one here, and so we're going to go ahead and just kind of go through the routine. First thing that I'm going to show you here is up on the upper right hand corner. It shows your histogram, and typically, if I'm not mistaken, while the photograph is in the camera, the histogram that you read on your camera is derived from the processed raw file that it shows on the back of your camera. And so when you import it into Lightroom, it will actually show you the literal raw file histogram. So I like to keep an eye on that while I'm processing. It also gives you some of your EXIF data here. It gives you your ISO and your focal length, your aperture, and okay. So again, with these, you can always close those if for some reason you don't need to use that at the moment. If you want to get it out of your way, you can always collapse these menus, okay? All right, the next one, what I want to show you now is these tools right along the top, okay? This is your crop overlay. That will allow you to be able to trim, okay? Now, some of these little, whenever you click on a tool, it opens up another box with tools inside of it, okay? So if for some reason you want to adjust your horizon, you can click on this little ruler here, and you can kind of drag it across here to try to maybe straighten up your horizon. Control Z or Command Z, I believe, on a Mac will allow you to go backwards. You can take that angle tool again and kind of just line things up here, and it's kind of cool. It looks kind of good. So you can also do different aspect ratios. You can go with the original. You can go with 1:1, 4:5, stuff like that. These are all presets in here for different sizes and stuff. All right. What I typically do is I stick with the original, and I don't really mess with my aspect ratio all that much for some reason. I just something I do. I don't know. Some people like to crop their photos into, you know, I think what it is when I frame my photos, I think these odd sizes and these odd cut mats and stuff don't really work all that good for me, and the standard sizes and canvases or metal prints and stuff like that. So I just keep it at the standard crop ratio. But you can always unclick this little lock. You see, if you see the lock, I'm clicking on it, it unlocks itself, and then it locks itself. If it's locked, you got it on the original aspect ratio. If you go down here and grab the corner, whoops, what did I do here? Control Z, Command Z, Control Z. You can come down here, all right, and grab this and move it around, and it stays with that same aspect ratio. So if you come over here and unclick that lock, you can move this thing all over the place, okay? So if for some reason you wanted to crop this into a panorama or something like that, unclick the lock and it'll unclick the aspect ratio, okay? All right, cool. All right, let's go back. All right. Let's see. Constrained image will allow you to something else too is if you ever have any questions, you can just click over that. It gives you a little menu thing there, a little deal. It says constrains the crop to the original image area. So, okay. So if you keep that on there like that, and yeah. I don't know what that does. Anyway. Okay. So anyway, when you're done with the overlay tool, okay. Now let me go back. Okay. So anyway, something else you can do while you have this selected is to, if you take your tool outside of the outside, you'll notice that the cursor will change to an arrow that's kind of bent at a 90-degree angle there. So if you do that, click your left mouse button and drag, you'll get a grid on there. It'll help you line things up, and you can rotate this around and, you know, rotate your image around and straighten it up that way if you wanted to, and then you move it around inside the cropped area. Alright, so move it outside the area, you can move this thing around, rotate it around, okay? Move it back again. Alright, so let me see what else. Right now, you can click on auto. It kind of senses where it should be. I don't use that so much. So yeah, when you're done with any of these adjustments, you just hit done down here at the bottom. All right, closes. Another one I use sometimes if I got a dust bunny in the sky is the spot removal tool. It's really good to take out, you know, maybe some spots, some dust bunnies or something up in the sky. Red eye tool. Of course, we don't take pictures of people, do we? We're landscape photographers, right? And if we do, they don't have red eye, so I don't use that one so much. Your graduated filter, it's like a graduated filter for your camera, except it's done in Lightroom. You click on that. Again, like I said before, whenever you click on these, you'll notice that another menu box pops up there, okay? So in this particular case, this menu box pops up. Alright, you come over to the camera or the photograph, and you have a little X thing there. You drag that down from the top if you care to. For some reason I got mine all set all wonky, so take it back to the original. Alright, so there you go. You've applied the grad filter, and you can move this up and down and affect the sky. You can do a contrast adjustment, you can do highlights, you can do all kinds of nifty stuff. Alright, shadows, whites, blacks, clarity, dehaze, add a little bit of fog or take some fog away, saturation. I'm not one that messes with saturation a heck of a lot. I do it differently. Sharpness, noise, all that kind of stuff. You can do all that stuff, but it only affects the top up here where the grad filter is applied, okay? One thing to remember is that even though you're messing with the sky and it looks really cool, you're also making the stuff in the shadows here kind of dark, alright? Alright. So you got to keep that in mind too. And that's one reason why I don't use a grad filter out there in the field very much, is because I don't like having that dark area over the top of certain parts of the photograph, and you just can't, you know. So I shoot to get a good histogram and come in and try to do all my adjustment and stuff in here without having a grad filter done. So anyway, you get through all of the adjustments here with the grad filter, you hit done. Alright, let me show you something else too. Is whenever you make any kind of adjustment over here with like this grad filter, you want to come back again, you'll notice a little button that's in the middle of the thing here. If you put your little cursor over the top of that, it'll show you where that grad filter has been applied. If you want to readjust that, you click on it, activate it again, and there's a little black button there, right? it reactivates your menu over here, and you can readjust it if you care to. Hit done. Alright, something else you can do is if you activate the filter, the grad filter, you come over here and you right click on it. You can either duplicate it, you can delete it, or you can reset all the filters and stuff there. Alright, hit done. What I'm going to do is delete it, because I'm not going to mess with it. Right now I'm going through and just showing you guys what. Alright, another one is this filter here. It's a radial filter, which makes a round, whoops, let go of it. It makes a round filter in your photograph. Kind of goofed up there, didn't I? Here, let me do this. Let me go back and reapply that. I let go of my mouse button. So, alright. It allows you to make like a round filter. You can use this to perhaps do a vignette or something like that. But again, I don't use it very much. This is just one I just don't use. But again, if you activate this tool, the dialog box comes up. You'll notice that it's dense in the middle and not in the outside. You can also invert this for some reason you wanted to do maybe an well, let me do this here. Alright. You can affect the feathering of it. So you could use this for a vignette if you cared to, but I'm not gonna do that because I don't use that kind of thing. So we're gonna delete that, and then we're gonna move on to my favorite tool in the toolbox. This one is called the adjustment brush. Alright. The adjustment brush is awesome because you can come in through here and you can just affect certain areas, okay? So let me go through this. We're going to spend a little bit more time on this one, alright? Let's just say we want to come through here and do this sky, but we don't want to really affect the shadows. We have a cool feature here called auto mask. I can always click on that and it attempts to just affect the bright spot up there, but as you notice, it didn't do so good. But let's see, the exposure is way up on this, and I don't know why this is preset this way, but I'll figure it out someday. Spend some time doing that. But I've got the auto mask on, and what we're going to do is we're going to try to affect the sky without affecting the shadows all that much, okay? And we're going to use just that radial brush, okay? And yeah, let's bring the shadows up so maybe those trees will show up a little bit better. Alright. So you can turn this effect off and on so you can see what you've done down here with these little toggle switches too. Alright. Let me see here. What else could we do in here? Where's my highlight? You know, you can do all kinds of neat kind of stuff in here. So the auto mask feature's kind of given me kind of a funky effect up there. So I'm gonna what I'm gonna do is this. I'm gonna find that son of a gun. Hold on a second. I'm gonna find that. Where did I? Oh, there it is. It's up here in the upper right. See it up there? That's that button I was looking for. We're gonna right click. We're gonna delete that. So I'm going to unclick my auto mask here because I don't think it was doing me a whole lot of justice here. Pardon me while I drink some Kool-Aid. And I'm going to come up here, and really the effect I want to have up here in the sky is going to be minimal anyway, so the masking really I don't think is going to be all that necessary, okay? So I just went through and I just painted that all in, and you can really... It really is showing up now because of these sliders are all wonky here, okay? But like I said, again, you can just put your hand little cursor thing over that and you can see where I've painted over the sky there, okay? Alright, I'm going to just kind of bring this down, maybe bring the shadows up again to try to affect those trees. You can really kind of see if you, here, let me zoom in. If I hit my space bar, and it allows me to deselect the tool and use my cursor. So watch what the shadow slider has done here to this tree. See that? So the effect that we had with that adjustment brush really has been negated by the shadow slider there. So, okay. All right. So we've gone through, we've affected the sky. We're going to hit done. And we're going to go, wow, that's awesome. But I want to do something else someplace else. I can always click on this button or this adjustment brush again. And let's just say I want to come through here and lighten up these rhododendrons a little bit down here. Again, I got to go through and get that so it's not done. Alright, so I painted this in. Let me hover over the top of that so you can see it'll be red there, right? And these are just, you know, I got the brush is feathered. If you look right here in the center, I should explain this to you too. The brush itself in the middle of that middle circle is 100% dark. By the time you get to the outer circle, it is faded away to no effect at all, okay? So that's the feathering, that's the amount of feathering, and that's all controlled over here. If you notice the sliders over here by the auto mask I showed you, alright? And you can affect the feathering here to make it hard or soft, alright? Cool. Right on. So we are affecting this area here. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to bring a little bit of the exposure up a little bit, maybe bring some of the highlights down to recover some detail in some of those rhododendrons. See what happens when we bring our shadow slider up. Let me bring my exposure back down a little bit. And again, let's click this off and on and see what the heck we've been doing. That's with our adjustment brush now. Alright, I've made 2 adjustments here. Just with the adjustment brush. Now, this is just an example. This may not be how I would process this photograph. I'm just showing you what these tools will do, okay? So we took this adjustment brush and we affected 2 areas. We got this area and this area. So, alright, hope that helps you with the adjustment brush a little bit. I'm going to delete these, okay, and I'm going to hit done. Now let's move on down the line. These are our adjustment sliders, okay? The adjustment, or the basic module is the one right here. This is the one that you're going to do probably the lion's share of your adjustment. And I usually start at the top. And I'm in the color side, but it also will do black and white, although I don't do black and white in this module. So I just stay in color. I come over here. The first thing I do is I check and see what kind of white balance is going to do me the best for this photograph, okay? So I'll click through these, and these are kind of like the presets that you have. And see, this one brought in a little bit of magenta, a little pink into it that wasn't in there before. So anyway, click through these. These are just kind of like the presets in your camera. All right, tungsten, fluorescent, flash, and then custom is going to be if you were to change your white balance somehow. All right, now if you go to as shot or shade, come back to custom, it's at what you set it at, okay? So there's your white balance as shot. And now we move on down the line here. If for some reason you have an area that's white in your shot, sometimes you can take this eyedropper and take it over to that white area. Actually, it's should be, I don't know, maybe 50% gray area or something. And you can click on that and it will attempt to do a white balance adjustment using the area that you choose on the photograph. So, but most of the times it's better if I just kind of, if I'm going to do anything, most of the time I can get a preset that'll get me where I want to be. If not, you can always affect the temperature or the tint. 99% of my manual white balance adjustment affects just the temperature. Rarely does it affect the tint. Okay, so we're going to move on down the line here into the tone. The tone area is where you affect your exposure. And these are global adjustments. Okay, global meanings it affects the whole darn thing. All right, and your contrast slider. All right, You'll notice contrast slider takes away like maybe the dark parts and the shadows and stuff, and kind of tones the sky down a little bit. Takes it up here, it makes it even darker in the shadows and brightens your sky up a little bit. Move on down the line. A lot of times, if my exposure is right, you don't need to mess with this stuff. I don't mess with this. Maybe I'll mess with the exposure a little bit as I tweak the photograph, but you know, you got it set right. Typically, you're fine. But I do rely on these sliders here. I really dig these sliders here, especially the highlights. See what it did to that sky. All right, without even messing with the adjustment brush. Look at that sky, man. That's awesome. Okay, and then the shadows too. Bingo! Look at that. You can see right into those shadows now. All right, so that is a really common adjustment for me. Bring my highlights down a little bit. Bring my shadows up a little bit. All right, meaning down meaning negative, up meaning positive, right? All right. When I do that, I may come back up here and maybe bring this down a little bit because it was kind of dark. It was getting towards nighttime. All right, my white slider and my black sliders, typically those I do real minor adjustment with. The white slider a little bit more than black, so the white slider will make it a little bit more shiny, a little bit more bright. The blacks will really affect the shadows severely. In other words, so you can see how the black really affects that. So the black slider I just do real lightly, typically, if I'm going to do it. All right, let's move on down the line here, and we're going to go to presence is what they call this. Presence, you can affect the clarity. This kind of gives it a soft, kind of a cloudy, foggy feel. This gives it a real harsh, contrasty feel, okay? And you can actually affect the contrast using this too, so. But that's another one I don't really mess with all that much. Vibrance and saturation. Vibrance is kind of like saturation, but it's not as heavy-handed, and it affects more of the blue or the cooler parts of the photograph. Don't mess with that very much. The saturation, of course, this is the one everybody is, everybody goes, you just leaned really hard on that saturation and called it good or something, right? That's typically the first one a novice photographer, digital photographer that's learning how to process their photos, they usually grab the saturation slider and bring that up. Nothing wrong with that. You know, if you're going to do a minimal amount of processing, a little bit of pulling up that saturation slider really makes those colors come in good. So, don't worry about it. Just don't get crazy. Vibrance is one you can kind of use too instead of the saturation, but in a photograph like this where you're kind of wanting a kind of a sunset, the saturation is going to affect more of the warmer parts of the photograph. So, maybe give it a little saturation, maybe not. It's up to you. It's your photograph, all right? Okay, we're done with the basic module. The tone curve. I use the tone curve to make final tone adjustments to the photograph, okay? So after I've already affected everything up in here in the basic module, if I want to come back down here in my tone curve and affect the highlights a little bit more, you can see I can tweak it a little bit. Same with the lights and stuff, the darks. It's kind of a, it's more of a fine-tune. In Lightroom, I kind of do things a little bit different in Photoshop, but in Lightroom, that's kind of how I affect that. So, also, I should probably show you that these little gizmos here on the side. There's a little gizmo there. You can go to an area that you want to affect the tone of. Click on that and drag this up or down. All right, and you can see that you can affect the tone curve by just dragging your mouse up and down, and it'll affect it over here. Okay, and that's kind of a cool thing to do. You can, click on different parts, like the dark part of the photograph, the bright part of the photograph, and kind of even things down out a little bit. So, okay, all right, and we can spend, we can spend a lot more time on tone curve and stuff. But like I said, Photoshop, maybe. Lightroom, not so much. So, another really groovy place to go here is our HSL area. All right, not necessarily color or black and white. I had mentioned earlier where I affect my black and white if I'm going to do black and white in Lightroom, and this is the place that I do it. And the reason is because I can click on black and white and I can go through these areas and affect these different areas in the photograph according to the color. So you can see here the rhododendrons and parts of the sky are getting brighter, so if I wanted them to stand out in the black and white photograph, I could do that. So that's real quick overview of black and white. So, but let's get back to what we were doing here with our color. I click on HSL. I don't necessarily do all of them like this. It gets a little busy. So what I do is I just go HSL and do hue, saturation, or luminance. HSL. What a coincidence, right? Alright. Now, up here we have saturation, and I mentioned that we have saturation, but again, these are global adjustments. Alright? Which is probably another reason why I don't mess with them here. If I wanted to do some sort of adjustment to saturation, typically it isn't to everything in the photograph. Maybe I just want to affect the rhododendrons down here, and so I've added a little saturation to the rhododendrons, and it's added a little bit more up here in the sky a little bit, but it hasn't affected the greens. The greens are on their own down here. Alright, so this is really kind of sweet. The luminance is really kind of cool because sometimes you get a little heavy-handed with saturation. You can lighten it up in here a little bit, or if for some reason the flowers aren't quite bright enough, you can always kind of pull them up over here. Okay, so you can also affect it with this little slidey tool over here too. So what it does is it will affect the sliders over here that correspond to the color of the area that you clicked on over here. So that's kind of cool, but yeah. Alright, so let's move on here, otherwise this video is going to be 8 days long. Split toning, we don't do that kind of stuff unless we're doing artsy kind of things, and we're not doing that. Detail, it's a very this is the place where I typically end up last, and this is the place where I do noise reduction and sharpening. Okay, noise reduction and sharpening could take you a special video all on its own, but essentially what you want to do is you want to move in on the photograph so you can see it at 100%, and then start affecting the color, the sharpening and the noise reduction stuff. Alright, a lot of times I can get away with sliding the color noise slider over because it doesn't really affect it that much in daytime shots. In nighttime shots sometimes it does, and it affects it too much, but typically in daytime shots, light shots, not so bad. Okay, but typically what I want to do is I probably want to come up here and do my sharpening first. Okay, and this is the sharpening. This radius is essentially how far past the edge the sharpening goes. The detail will actually kind of cause even your noise to start kind of getting coming back in the shot. So I don't usually mess with the detail a whole heck of a lot. I usually rely more on the amount of sharpening and the radius of the sharpening on the edges of the photograph, or the edges in the photograph. Now masking is one where theoretically what it does is it will separate your blank areas from the edges and will remove as much of the sharpening as it can from the open areas and concentrate it to the edges of on your edges. Okay. Alright, after I get done with my sharpening, then I come down through here and maybe we'll see how it's affected the noise in the photograph, because even when you're sharpening your edges, it's also going to sharpen any kind of ISO noise or something like that you might have in there too. Okay. And if you do too much sharpening, or if you do too much noise reduction, it's just going to make it look really flat and muddy and soft and, I don't know, unsharp. It's not going to look sharp at all. Okay. Alright, the next one we're going to do is lens correction. Now, even though this one's all the way down here, and I've kind of gotten to this one towards the end, this is really the first one I go to. So, this is the first thing I do. I come into Lightroom with my photograph. I come in and I click on Remove Chromatic Aberration. Alright, now I want to show you on the edge of this tree here, if you look, you can see some purple right on the edge of that tree there, and probably maybe some green or yellow or something on the edge on the other side. Not as prominent, but the purple magenta really shows up there. You can see it over here on this side too, a little bit over there. But either way, I see it a lot here, so let's do this. I'm going to move in a little bit more here. I'm going to, so you guys can see this. That's that chromatic aberration. I can be flipping through on and looking at people's photos online, and I can say, oh man, that's a nice photo, but oh, look at that CA. Look at that chromatic aberration. They forgot to take that out. So what I do is I click on that, and if you watch, bingo, look at that. It's just taken that all away. Just removed it. It's completely gone, and it'll affect the whole photograph. It really will. And then I also will try enable profile corrections, okay? Sometimes it does a negative vignette I don't necessarily care for. Your Lightroom should sense your lens. If not, you may have to look for it, or it may not be in there. Sometimes I will look at the effect of enable profile correction, not like it, and I'll click it back off and not do that. And so typically what this affects is your distortion, which is like barrel distortion, and it's more or less, if you look, see, it's kind of like making it into a fisheye, right? Or the vignetting. Alright. Alright. So, what I do is I come in here very first, lens correction. Sometimes I forget and I go, daggone it, I processed this whole darn thing and I forgot to take the chromatic aberration out or something like that. But not so much, every now and then. But alright. Transform. This one here, we've already basically, I think, done most of that stuff up here when we go up here to the crop overlay tool. Alright, what this does is it will affect your the distortion vertically, horizontally. I do at times use this vertical distortion correction if I'm shooting maybe the interior of a home and I don't necessarily have my camera level like I should have, and the walls are kind of creeping in at the top or the bottom. Or come up here and I'll correct it there. The horizontal correction, not so much, but every now and then, who knows. If you will notice also, if for some reason you make this correction, it's got this white on the outside, click on constrain crop, and it will crop that white part out of there. Okay, so we're not going to do that, are we? Because it's we're going to go back to where we was before. Alright, actually what we can do is come down here at the bottom, hit reset. We'll go right back to the original. Okay, so we're going to get out of transform because really we don't dwell there very often. So effects, don't really go into effects very often. You can probably do dehaze. We've already gone over that a little bit there in that grad filter, if you remember right. You can add a little bit of soft haze to it, or if for some reason your photo is hazy, you can take the haze out of it. Okay, grain, we don't want to add grain in there. We want to take it out, right? But for some reason you're doing a black and white and you wanted to simulate some sort of a film grain. You know, it's not grain and noise are different, but either way, if you wanted to have that in there as an effect, then you can add it there. Now, one thing you could do is there are times when I will do a vignette. This is a really handy place to do a vignette. Okay, it'll allow you to do the amount of the vignette. It'll allow you to affect the midpoint of the vignette, the roundness of it here, also how much it's feathered. It'll go from hard, you can see a hard edge there. Alright, see that? To a soft one. Alright, the roundness, oval, square. Alright, see how that's working there? We can feather that a little bit more. And now we also have a little slider down here. It's called highlights. Now it will, what it's supposed to do basically is let the bright parts shine through your vignette. Makes it look a little more natural, okay? Alright, we're going to hit reset again. We're going to close this. Camera calibration, we're not going to worry about that for right now. Let me see. We've gone through everything in Lightroom. Holy buckets. Now, let's just say you've got everything all adjusted here. Everything looks groovy. The next thing you want to do is you want to come up here to File. We want to go to Export. All right. Okay. We will be exporting to our hard drive. We're going to go into the same folder as the original one. If for some reason you wanted to go someplace else, you can specify another folder. You can choose where you're going to go. It'll choose a place on your computer. You can put it into a subfolder and call it something. You can do some renaming stuff here if you cared to. We're not going to do any video stuff here. File settings. I have this one set to JPEG. I wanted to limit the file size to 2 megs, 2000K, and I did this for a client because they upload their photos to their website and have a 2 meg limit on their file size. For some reason you didn't care to, you could also change this or unchange this. You can change your format from JPEG to PSDs, TIFFs, DNGs. DNGs are digital negatives. They're kind of like a PSD but different. For some reason you want it affected by the quality, you can do that there, okay? Image sizing, if for some reason you wanted to resize it to fit a certain pixel size. Let's say you're sizing it for Facebook or someplace and you wanted to make it a pixel size or something. Alright, you can do it there. Affect the resolution here if you cared to. If you're posting on online, the resolution doesn't matter. If you're doing print, perhaps. Sharpening, you got some sharpening options here. Matte and glossy paper and screen. The screen actually works pretty good for, you know, posting online and posting Facebook and stuff. Your metadata, if you want to keep your metadata or strip it out, you can click there and change that if you cared to. Here's a cool place. We're going to go over watermarking here real quick. You notice we got one here called Darlene's watermark. For some reason you wanted to do a new watermark, click on, let me do that again, show you. This drop down box gives you an option called Edit Watermarks. Click on that guy. This gives you this dialog box here, and this is kind of cool because down here you can post or type in stuff like your name. Alright, your name shows up down here. Come over here, you can start changing some of this kind of stuff. For some reason you've created yourself some sort of a watermark in Photoshop or someplace like that. You can choose it here. Typically PNGs are better because you can do a transparent background. JPEGs are solid. You can add that there, but like I said, you're going to have somebody, or you're going to have to go into Photoshop and create that and save it as a file. Easier option is what we're going to be doing here is a text option. You can choose your fonts here, the style, bold, italic, regular, whatever. You can choose where it's aligned to, and that's typically that's inside of the text box, okay? The color of your font is here. You can choose your colors. Here, what are we doing here? You can do a hex code in here. What are we doing with colors here? I've never really done colors, so should be able to. Here we go. All right. Bring this up. Click on red. You can do that, whatever. Okay? So, we got the color we've changed. Let's take it back to white again. We don't want a color. Okay. Okay. So, we got white. Here, if you wanted to do a shadow or someplace, you can do that. You can do vary your opacity here to 100%. Oh, I should say this is for the shadow. All right, and that's not for the font. So if you want to do a shadow, do that here. Affect the opacity of the shadow, offset, the radius, the angle of it. I don't necessarily care to have a shadow underneath of it. Click it off. Maybe you do. I don't know. The opacity to the watermark is affected here. If you look down below, while I slide this slider, you can see how it gets brighter or darker. So if you wanted it at 25% or 50% like that, you can change that here. Right here, the size, you can affect the size of it. All right. You can come down here and now this will, this of course, you know, affects the whole darn, you know, it fills the picture fits in the picture. We don't want to do that. All right, now for some reason you want to take it to away from the edge of the photograph and move it up or down. You can do that here. A lot of times you want this in and away from the edge if it's going to be inside of a frame and you wanted to have your signature down here or something like that. Move it away from there. Now down here, for some reason you want it on the left or the right. That's where you change that here. Upper right hand, upper left hand, put it in the middle. All right, wanted to rotate it, whatever. So now, once you've done all this kind of stuff, if you wanted to, you could save it. It'll ask you if you wanted to save it as something else. You can save this as your name watermark and hit create. Now, when you come back, there's your watermark, your name watermark. It will add that to the photograph when you export it. Okay, I'm not going to do that. We're going to hit export, and this should export it out of there. If I'm not mistaken, if I had it set right, it should come up in a dialog box, and there it is. All right. Now what this has done is turned it into a JPEG. If you look over here to the right, it's 1.49 megabytes. So it's 1.5 megabytes in size. It's 1850 by 1235. It's a JPEG. So it exported it in the size and resolution and everything that we wanted. It exported it with all of your adjustments and everything, and you're good to go. And there you go. That is how you import a photograph in Lightroom, and these are all the adjustments and everything over here on the right hand side. That's how you export it out of Lightroom, and there you go. You don't have any excuses anymore. Get in there and start processing your pictures. Hey, love you guys. I gotta call this off, man. I don't know how long this is, but I think this is longer than I wanted it to be. It's like 47 minutes long. So this is gonna be kind of a heavy one. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll be posting more. Let me know if you have any questions. Leave any questions or anything down in the comments down there, and I'll do my best to get to them. All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye.